All right. If there are no questions on the homework, we're going to go on and look at today's lesson. Now, today's lesson, we're going to mainly focus on writing equations of a line and interpreting slope. And then tomorrow we'll look at line of best fit, and we'll kind of work with how the calculator can help us find that. Now, whenever we look at an equation of a line, it's given in really one of two ways. It's listed three, but we really don't think of the third way as really any different than one of the first two. The first one is if we're given the slope and y-intercept, we use slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. And that would be our slope-intercept form of the equation of the line. And well, the reason they call it that is because, well, we're given the slope and the y-intercept. The m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Let's put that away. Thank you. Now, the second one is our slope point. If we're given the slope at a point, we use slope point form. Because we're given a slope and a point. Slope point. Point slope. You're given a point and the slope. So we'll use that equation to find the equation of the line. Now, the last one, given 2 points, first use the slope formula to find m and then use point slope. Because some books write down what this would be, y2 minus y1 over x1 times x minus x1. That's really just plugging in the slope formula into the point slope. And you don't have to write that down because that's not really helpful. Because you're better off just figuring out what the slope is and just using point slope. It's a little bit easier to use and not so confusing on what's going where and how it all simplifies down. And you've used all of these before. As in Algebra 1, you used y equals mx plus b. And you also used y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And that's what we're going to use, what we will be utilizing today. So we look at this first one here, this first problem. The graph shows the distance asteroid 2012 DA14 travels in x seconds. Write the equation of a line and interpret the slope. So we'll do that first, and then we want to figure out how long does it take for it to travel 17,200 miles. So we look at this here. They're given the graph. We're given the graph for the equation of the line. And we want to utilize that to find the equation. Did they give us the y-intercept for this here? Did they give us the y-intercept on the graph? What is the y-intercept? Huh? So y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Our value for b. So did they give that to us here on the graph? Well, they did. What would that value be? It'd be 0. It crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. And the value of y at the y-axis is 0. Well, now we need to find the slope. Now, the slope is really the change in y over the change in x, delta y over delta x. Or we can say that it is rise over run. Or it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All of those should give us the exact same values. Well, since we started at 0, 0, how far did it rise? 24 is our first point. And how far did it run? 5, that's our point. We could have plugged it into the equation. So we take 24 minus, well, the other point was 0, 0. So we can say 24 minus 0 is what? 24. Then the other one on bottom would be 5 minus 0, which is just 5. So the slope is 24 over 5. And at this point here, we could use the y equals mx plus b, so y would equal what? Plus 0, but we don't really need the plus 0 because it doesn't add anything. Y equals mx plus b. Any questions on how we got the equation of the line? Okay, if we're good with the equation of the line. So equation of the line, got it. Interpret the slope is what we need to do next. So the 5 is telling me seconds. So for every 5 seconds, it does what? Travels 24 miles. Now, give or take, the distance between here and Siloam is about 24 miles, give or take. So that means if we traveled as fast as this asteroid, we could get between here and Siloam in 5 seconds. That's really fast. And you'll have to do this part on the homework. The interpreting the slope, that's all you're doing. What is the slope telling us? So here it's telling us for every 5 seconds, change in x, it is traveling 24 miles. That's all we're doing. Did those two. Any questions on this so far before we start the next part? Okay, it tells us the asteroid came within 17,200 miles of Earth in February 2013. About how long does it take the asteroid to travel that distance? So how long does it take it to travel 17,200 miles? So that's what we want to know. Now, which variable, x or y, deals with distance? The y value. So if I want to know the time it takes to travel 17,200 miles, we're going to plug 17,200 miles in for y. And we're going to want to solve for the value of x. So what can we do now to get x by itself? Because these will cancel, leaving x by itself. So now we just need to divide 17,200 by 24 divided by 5. And at this point here, you can go on and just type it into a calculator. Okay. Or I'll type it into a calculator. And if we plug this in, we'll get 3,583.3 repeated seconds. Any questions on this here? 24/5. Yeah. 4 divided by 5. Are we good with this here? Okay. Let's look at the next one. This next problem here. I'll probably still do this. The graph shows the remaining balance Y on a car loan after making X monthly payments. Write an equation of the line and interpret the slope and Y-intercept. So here it's asking a little bit more. What is the remaining balance? So, write an equation of the line first. Did it give us the Y-intercept? So what's the value of B for our Y-intercept? 18. Because the Y-intercept itself would be 0, 18, but the value we want is 18. Now we need the slope. Well, we'll use the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, because essentially that's what we'll have to do. Well, we can start off with 18 minus what? 15, because y2 minus y1. Right here. So it intersects the y-axis. And the x value of the y-intercept will always be what? 0. Because where it crosses the y-axis, the value of x at the y-intercept will always be 0. So if we're given a point where x, the value of x is 0, the value of y will be our y-intercept. It will be that value of b every single time. Now for our slope, this time we're using the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we picked 18 minus 15. So the x value that goes first would be what? 0. Because again, since 18 went first, its x value has to go first. This is one of the few where we plug in 2 points. That order does matter. Well, 18 minus 15 is 3. 0 minus 10 is, so the slope is negative 3 over 10. Negative 3 divided by 10. So our equation, y equals mx plus b, our m is negative 3/10 x plus 18. Equation of the line is done. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to interpret the slope. For every 10 payments, what happens? What do we call it? They call it the balance. Goes down what? So the 3 would be correct, but it's in what? So it would go down 3 on the graph, but because the graph's y values are set up in thousands, it would be going down 3,000. So for every 10 payments, the balance of the card goes down $3,000. Or for every payment, the balance of the card goes down $300. Okay. So we interpreted the slope. Now what is the y-intercept? The 18 or 18,000. What is that telling us? Because is the what? starting value or the loan cost. Because it's the starting cost of the loan or the value of the car. Because it's how much we started out with. Because when we've paid 0 months, we've made 0 payments, the overall cost is $18,000. Because the Y-Intercept tells us this is the starting cost. This is where the cost of the car started. Or really the loan started. But I'll take either one. Because when would the cost of the loan and the cost of the car be different? Why would it be different? Because if you've watched any car commercials, they'll sometimes say 0 down. What are they talking about? 0 down payment. Because most, if you have the ability to do it, you can put a down payment on the car. Pretty much this is the money I have right now I can put down. So if you put $6,000 down on an $18,000 car, the starting value or starting cost of the loan would not be 18, it would be 12. You would pay less. So starting value of the loan, I'll take starting value of the car, considering if you didn't put anything down. So that takes care of all of that. The only thing left is what is the remaining balance after 36 payments? So our equation here. X or Y, which one is payments? X, because X is pretty much the number of payments made. So if I'm wanting to know how much Y is left if we've made 36 payments, we're going to plug 36 in for X. And again, at this point, we can plug this whole thing into the calculator. Now, if we plug this in, this would be negative 10.8 plus 18. So Y is equal to 7.2. So how much is left? $7,200. Is anybody surprised that the slope for this problem here was negative? Well, no, you're making payments on a loan. It should go down. Now this here has it all the way out to 60 payments. Now normally, unless somebody was really crooked and messed you over on a car loan, you're only making 1 payment a month, 1 actual payment, what they'll credit it for. So a 60 month or 60 payments is going to be, consider how long, 12 payments a year, would be 5 years. Now at some point it's inevitable in the society that we are that you're going to have to get a car loan payment eventually, most likely. Unless you're able to find someone who's willing to sell you a car at cash value, most likely you'll end up taking out a loan. Now, you never want to take out a car loan that's more than 5 years, because you'll end up most likely getting a situation that's called upside down. Y'all know what upside down on a loan means? You owe more than what it's worth, which is, you can at least catch back up and get it down low enough, that's fine. But really, if you get upside down, where the car is only worth $3,000 and you owe $5,000 on it, if you wreck it, the company, the insurance company, if they pay out, will give you the $3,000 and write it off. But you owe $5,000. So you can put the whole thing into the loan, but you still owe $2,000 that you still have to pay back on a car you don't own. So being upside down is not a good thing. And it's not that getting a loan over 5 years won't happen. It won't do that. Trucks, especially the way they are with value now. But you wouldn't want to do that because it's just extending the loan. So there's that. Let's look at one more. One more of these type, and then we'll look at one other. This one here, the graph shows the distance Allison hikes in X hours. Write an equation of the line and interpret the slope. How long does it take Allison to hike 14 miles traveling at the same rate? So, are we given the y-intercept, the value b? 0. Because whenever x is 0, that's where the y-intercept is at. So it is at 0, 0. So the value b here is 0. Which kind of makes it nice for the slope, because any point along that line we can go rise over run and get it there. So how far did we go up? 24 and a half. And we went over. Now, we don't like it in this form here because we don't do decimals and fractions. We don't want a decimal and fraction in the same part. You can have it as a decimal, you can have it as a fraction, you can't have it as both. Because we have a decimal in the numerator and a fraction. So you can actually type this into the calculator and it'll tell you that this is 7/2 or 3.5. We can, especially with the yellow calculator, you can adjust between decimals and fractions pretty easily. So what would the equation for this be? Y equals what? Seven halves x plus 0, or we can just say y equals 7/2 x. Because the plus 0 really doesn't add anything. It doesn't affect the overall equation. So we can just say 7/2 x. Any questions on how we got the equation of the line? Okay. Let's interpret the slope. For every what? Because the denominator would be our x. So for every 2 hours we travel, for every 2 hours she travels 7 miles. Or we could say that she travels 7 miles every 2 hours. We just need some way to explain how the slope is, what it's telling us. So it could be in either one of those forms. We could say that she travels 3.5 miles every hour, because that would be the same thing. Okay. Interpreted the slope. Done. How long does it take Allison to hike 14 miles traveling at the same rate? You can go and say it. 4 hours. How long did it take her to travel? How far did she go in 2 hours? 7 to 14 is just adding it again, yes? So this here would be I mean, if it's something like, if this shows up on the homework where you're just like, oh, I just double it, or hey, it's 3, because if it was asking for how long does it take her to travel 21 miles, 7 times 3 is 21, so 2 times 3 would be 6. You can go on and put it down. Because if it asks for how long it took her to travel, say, 15 miles, okay, then we might actually need to put in the calculations, because that's not a nice set of 7. Questions on this here? We good with this here? Okay. This is the last problem we'll look at today. 2 prom venues charge a rental fee plus a fee per student. And again, most places will do this, especially For those of you in the junior class, if you're thinking about picking up prom, this is one of the things that does come into play. They will have a rental fee plus cost per student. The table shows the costs for different number of students at Lakeside Inn. The total cost Y in dollars for X students at Sunview Resort is represented by this equation. So we want to find out two things. One, which is cheaper per student, and two, how many students must attend for the total cost to be the same. So we look at this here. So Sunview Resort, how much does it cost per student for Sunview Resort? What do y'all think? Because they gave us the equation, y equals 10x plus 600. So what is the cost per student for Sunview? 10, because x is the number of students. So if we have one student, and 10 times 1 is 10. So Sunview is charging $10 per student plus a $600 rental fee. So we know that. How much is Lakeside charging per student? Did they tell us? No, they gave us a table, right? We could if it wasn't for the rental fee. Because if it started out at $0, they didn't charge anything for us to show up, we could do that. But really, that 10 for Sunview is just where what? The slope would be, isn't it? Because that's what's changing. So for Lakeside, what we can do is find the slope. So we could use the 1800 and 1500. 1800 minus 1500. I'm just picking 2 points. I just picked the top two. But it doesn't matter which 2 points we use? No, because if it's a line, the slope is the same for any 2 points on the line. So underneath, we'd have 125 minus 100. So 1800 minus 1500 would be? 125 minus 100 is? 300 divided by 25. So 100 divided by 25 is 4. 4 makes 100. How many hundreds makes 300? 4 times 3 is? That's just one way to break it down. If you don't have a calculator, just see next number. So 4 would give me 100. I need 3 of them. 3 times 4 is 12. So how much does Lakeside charge per student? So which venue charges less per student? Sunview. Okay. So that deals with the first part. Now the second part, how many students must attend for the cost to be the same, total cost to be the same? The easiest way to go about this is if we had 2 equations. Because if I had 2 equations and we're wanting to know when the cost or y is the same, we could set them equal to each other. So what we need to do is find the equation for our Lakeside Inn. Now what we're going to use is our point slope. Now we know the slope is 12. Do I have a point? Well, yes. It's to find the equation. Har, har, har. That's my point for doing this. So we can I just pick the top point because it's the first one that shows up. So we can say 1500 for y and 100 for x. And it really doesn't matter which one we use because, again, equation of the line, we're going to get the same values in the end. So the first thing we need to do is to distribute the 12, because we need this in y equals mx plus b form. In point slope form, it doesn't help us too much when trying to compare two lines. Now 12 times x will be 12x. 12 times negative 100 is negative. Almost. Minus, but plus 1,500. Yes, because these will cancel, giving us that y is equal to 12x plus 300. So this is for the lake. And this is for Sunview. Now you don't have to rewrite those back out because on your paper you can still see the two equations. For me, the other equation's way up high. Now we came to the conclusion that Sunview has the cheaper cost per student. But the Sunrise also has the higher what? Rental fee, because they're starting off at a higher value. So this one here starts off more expensive than this one, but this one here has the higher cost per student. So what we want to see is where these will meet up. When are they going to cost the same? Well, since the cost is y, we can actually set these two equal to each other because we're wanting to know when the cost is the same. And since the value of y is the cost, we're wanting to know when the y values are the same. So we can really just set them equal to each other and solve for the value of x. What can we do first? Yes, we can subtract 10x from both sides. Because 10x minus 10x would be 0, leaving us with 600 is equal to. Yes. $300 is equal to. So x is equal to 150. So if there are 150 students, the cost for Sunview and Lakeside will be the same, whatever that is. I have a feeling they told us. $2,100 is when they'll be the same. Now we said that Lakeside starts off cheaper, yes, because of the $300. So really, if we have less than 150 students, it's going to be cheaper to go to Lakeside. But if we have 151 students, where would we want to go? Sunview, because even though it's more expensive to start off with, it gets cheaper as we get more people in. Now, if we have exactly 150 people or 150 students going, does it matter which one we pick? Well, no, because they're both going to be $2,100. It doesn't matter. So that works out there. Questions on this here? Now, this doesn't always work out. I mean, this works out for the most part in real life, but most places, if you have a certain number of people that will show up or you're guaranteed, you can sometimes get price breaks. They'll help out. They'll work with you, depending on what it is. So, something to look at. Any questions on any of this here? Now, we do have a few more, but how do y'all feel with these here? Not too bad? Okay. We're going to finish this up tomorrow with finding the line of best fit and going over what that is and using the calculators to find it. And here is the assignment. I believe problems 3 through 8 are dealing with what we started off with, finding the equation of the line, interpreting the slope, and they might ask you another question, find this value. Question number 9 is what we just did with the lakeside in and sun view rise, that kind of problem. And then problem number 11 is an error detection problem. For those of you, I think if you had geometry last year, both me and Ms. Kendall utilized these. There is an error in the problem. So there is no error. No, there is an error. Because it will look like a sheet of paper having an X in the corner. There is a problem somewhere in there. So you have two things. One, you need to identify what the error is, where they went wrong, and 2 is correct it. So either, because geometry had one the other day, they forgot to use the absolute value bars. So they forgot to use the absolute value. This is what the correct answer should be. So it's utilizing what we went over and just fixing whatever they went wrong. And that's it.